Underneath the cherry blossom trees, a young man carried his little sister on his back as they walked home. A car slowly passed by. Startled by a dog, the little girl dropped her candy onto the ground. The girl in the car quickly urged her father to reverse, leaning out the window to apologize to the child. The young man turned and glanced at the girl in the car, just a fleeting look. But Dujin was instantly captivated by her. She stared back at him. Cherry blossoms drifted through the air. Witnessing this picturesque moment, Dujin had no idea that his fate had just become intertwined with this girl. The next morning, Jae cheerfully headed to school. However, she was stopped at the gate by a teacher for not wearing her uniform. Seeing her hat and her somewhat rebellious appearance, the teacher decided to make an example of her. Jae proactively took off her jacket, but the teacher was determined to teach her a lesson, brandishing a ruler and poking her shoulder. Suddenly, Dujin rushed forward and grabbed the ruler, infuriating the teacher. Dujin released his grip. The teacher ordered them both to the athletic field to run 10 laps as punishment while he leisurely watched. After 5 laps, Jae, lacking stamina, stopped to rest. Dujin ran over to check on her. She told him she was tired and to leave her, offering to finish the remaining laps for her. As he started to tell the teacher, Jae stopped him, claiming to have a perfect plan. After a few more steps, she dramatically collapsed. The teacher panicked. Dujin rushed to her side. It turned out Jae had feigned fainting to trick the teacher. Dujin ended up carrying her to the nurse's office. Seeing his concern, Jae reassured him, "I didn't really faint, you don't have to worry so much." With that, she fainted again on his shoulder. Back in the classroom, the teacher introduced a new student. To Dujin's astonishment, it was Jae. Han Jae, the transfer student, announced to the class that her mother was a famous celebrity and could get them autographs from their idols. This excited the class, and they enthusiastically welcomed Jae. To further surprise, Jae ended up as Dujin's deskmate. She immediately turned to greet him warmly, but Dujin responded with coldness. Misinterpreting his reaction as anger over the earlier punishment, Jae became slightly upset. Faced with Jae's persistent advances, Dujin felt overwhelmed. Then Jae played her trump card, an innocent, pleading look that instantly disarmed him. Jae was unaware that Dujin's heart was pounding in his chest. At school, Jae constantly followed Dujin, even accidentally trailing him into the boys' restroom. During gym class, she offered him her handkerchief after he washed his face, only to be met with his coldness again, leaving her dejected. After school, while walking with her friends, Jae spotted Dujin, still solitary and alone. She felt curious about him. It wasn't until his little sister ran into his arms that a smile finally appeared on Dujin's face. Unexpectedly, Jae felt a pang of jealousy. The reason for Dujin's constant coldness stemmed from his intimidating father. One stormy night, the man drove his truck home only to be blocked by a dog. He put on his hood, got out of the truck, and slowly approached the hapless animal. That evening, restless and unable to stay inside, Jae prepared to seek out her brother. But she discovered her dog was missing. She frantically searched, soon finding the dog's name tag lying in the rain. Looking up, she spotted a distant iron gate. Mustering her courage, she pushed it open and stepped inside. The sound of barking from within the house piqued her suspicion. Determined to confirm if it was her dog, she followed an open basement door leading underground. There, she stumbled upon Dujin hammering at a cage containing her dog. Seeing Jae, Dujin froze. A dark figure suddenly appeared behind her. A man approached, startling Jae, who fell to the ground in fear. Dujin gripped the hammer, staring at the man. It was his father. Dujin struggled to break the cage. Father and son locked eyes, their gazes filled with animosity. The man decided to play it cool. Dujin grabbed Jae's hand and led her out of the creepy basement room. Dujin's father hastily apologized to Jae, explaining that he'd only brought the dog home to find its owner. Dujin knew his father was lying. He pulled Jae behind him, preparing to take her home. After they left, his father returned to the basement, glancing at the hammer inside the cage, a sinister smile spreading across his face. On their way home, Jae noticed Dujin's injured hand. She quickly took out her handkerchief and carefully bandaged it. It was the first time Dujin had experienced such care. But he abruptly stood, telling Jae to forget what happened tonight and pretend they didn't know each other. Doo-jin recalled entering his father's workshop and seeing the caged dog, immediately recognizing it as Jae's. Seeing the tools on the table, he knew what his father intended and grabbed the hammer to free the dog. His desire to distance himself from Jae stemmed from fear that his father would pose a threat to her. To his surprise, Jae firmly shook her head in refusal. Her sudden confession stirred something within the usually stoic and aloof Doo-jin. After Doo-jin safely escorted Jae home, her mother greeted him warmly. She instantly recognized him as a quiet, solitary, and reserved young man. Taking his hand, she expressed her fondness for him and hoped he and Jae could become good friends, inviting him to visit often. Her kind and affectionate words resonated deeply with Doo-jin, who had lost his mother at a young age, like a warm current flowing through his heart. After changing, Jae bounded downstairs and sat close beside him. Doo-jin blushed, flustered. Seeing her cheerful and lively demeanor, a rare smile touched his lips. Their eyes met and both felt a surge of shyness. Jae's mother, watching them, beamed. Before Doo-jin left, she gave him a bag of food, inviting him to bring his sister next time. Concerned he might catch a cold, she removed her silk scarf and carefully wrapped it around his neck. Before leaving, Doo-jin turned back to look at Jae's house. Such warmth and welcoming homes were something he had always longed for. As soon as Doo-jin returned home, his father confronted him. Seeing the scarf and food, his father's face darkened. After a furious tirade aimed at straightening out Doo-jin, he stormed off. In the school cafeteria, the beautiful and popular girl spotted Doo-jin in the lunch line. After getting her food, she sat beside him. While he was distracted, she took his hand, intending to check his injury. Doo-jin, flustered and overwhelmed by her forwardness, didn't know how to react. Just then, two girls suddenly approached, wanting Jae's mother to help them get their idol's autograph. Jae happily agreed. Unexpectedly, they pushed their luck, asking Jae to also get the idol's phone number. After Jae refused, their expressions immediately soured and they signaled to their friends sitting nearby. But Doo-jin, sitting across from them, saw right through it. He quickly finished his drink before the girls could do anything to Jae, even choking a little in the process. The way he stood up for Jae was pretty special, wasn't it? On the way home from school, some girls walking behind them started gossiping and bad-mouthing Doo-jin. Walking behind with his sister, he kept his eyes fixed on Jae's back as she walked ahead. As soon as he reached his seat, Doo-jin noticed the ointment and bandages Jae had prepared for him. Turning his head, he saw Jae sleeping soundly, the bright sunlight causing her to furrow her brows. Doo-jin reached out and shielded her from the sun. In that moment, he met the first person he truly wanted to protect. Today, Doo-jin was sitting pensively under a cherry blossom tree. After Jae spotted him, she quietly snuck up behind him and blew on the cherry blossoms. Seeing the cherry blossom petals flutter around him, Doo-jin was startled. Turning around, he saw it was Jae playing a trick on him. Jae could tell he wasn't in a good mood. She tried to cheer him up by making him laugh. Faced with Doo-jin's unexpected confession, Jae froze, completely stunned. But then Doo-jin suddenly burst into tears. It turned out he had been suppressing his feelings for Jae. He felt that getting close to her would only bring her misfortune. And all of this was because of his terrifying father. Since Doo-jin was very young, his father had relentlessly brainwashed him with twisted, antisocial ideologies, wanting to mold him into the same kind of cruel animal he was. This led to Doo-jin's withdrawn personality. It wasn't that he didn't want to make friends, but that he was afraid to. Jae's appearance was like a beautiful rainbow, adding color to his life. Unexpectedly, he found himself falling for this innocent, naive girl. Just a few days ago, Doo-jin's father, a repairman, helped an elderly woman fix a clogged pipe. The homeowner even kindly offered him some juice. While talking to her, he learned that she and her husband lived alone. His expression immediately turned cold and cruel. The homeowner was terrified by the hammer in his hand. Having achieved his objective, he left the house satisfied. That night, both Doo-jin and his brother saw a news report about a woman who had been murdered. Doo-jin instinctively looked at his father. Today, his father saw a girl waiting alone for a ride. A restless feeling came over him and he proceeded to abduct her using his usual methods. But he never expected his crime to be witnessed. Moreover, the witness was his own wife. After Doojean's stepmother closed her shop and was getting ready to go home, she called her husband to pick her up, but he didn't answer. Then she suddenly remembered a woman telling her earlier that day that she had seen her husband driving off with another woman. Doojean's stepmother immediately saw red, confronting and getting into a fight with the woman getting her hair done. Her husband had always been honest and straightforward. How could he have an affair? Now unable to reach her husband by phone, the woman's words ringing in her ears, Doojean's stepmother called a car and went to his workplace, wanting to understand what was going on. She never expected to witness a scene that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She saw Doojean's father holding a woman's purse and clothes. Immediately believing her husband was having an affair, she hurriedly climbed the gate and snuck inside. Hiding behind a wall, she watched him throw the clothes and purse into a fire. Doubt gnawed at her until she saw the ID card in his hand and the red stain on his face. Terror washed over her, her legs turning to jelly. She accidentally made a noise. Coincidentally, a stray cat wandered by, dispelling Doojean's father's suspicion. His stepmother hid in a nearby corner, covering her mouth, barely daring to breathe. Only after he left did she flee in a panic. Recalling her daughter's earlier whispered words, Doojean's stepmother was filled with dread. She rushed home, frantically calling her daughter's name. Early the next morning, she packed their bags, preparing to run away. She couldn't live with the murderer any longer. But her daughter was reluctant to leave Doojean's brother. She resolutely dragged her daughter out of the house. Unexpectedly, they ran straight into Doojean. Seeing the luggage in his stepmother's hands, he understood everything. Just then, the sound of a truck engine approached. Thinking it was Doojean's father returning, his stepmother, terrified, hid in the bushes, not daring to move. Turned out to be a false alarm. Doojean knew how terrifying his father was. He himself couldn't escape him. He didn't want his stepmother and stepsister to suffer the same torment. After telling his stepsister to be good and listen to her mother, he thanked his stepmother for taking care of him for the past 2 years. He told her she shouldn't feel guilty for leaving. During their time together, he had felt true maternal love, letting down his guard against this motherly affection. Poor Doojean, bearing this burden all alone. His deranged father, simply because his son was close to a female classmate's family, brutally murdered the girl's parents. Jae curled up in a corner, trembling uncontrollably. Doojean's father, a cruel animal, how could he risk letting Jae recognize him? Jae was terrified into tears by him. Just as Doojean's father raised the hammer, Doojean appeared. He witnessed his father about to murder the girl he loved. Seeing his son, his father lowered the hammer. Then, unaware of the situation, Jae kindly told him to run. Doojean, instead of running, stepped forward, saying he had called the police. He then embraced the trembling Jae, glaring at his father. Ignoring his son's intervention, his father raised the hammer again. Doojean was violently shoved to the ground. His father slowly crouched down, telling Doojean that he was more like him than his older brother. Finally, Doojean's father fled before the police arrived. He stole a pickup truck and escaped, but he was quickly spotted by the police. He even disregarded a roadblock, driving straight through it. Only when the tires blew out did he slam on the brakes. He was finally apprehended. At the same time, Jae was picked up by her older brother, who had just arrived home, in a police car. On the way to the police station, she saw Doojean squatting listlessly by the side of the road. Jae immediately got out of the car and stood at a distance, staring at Doojean. Both of them, wounded, simply looked at each other. Then Jae ran to him and hugged him tightly, tears falling as she took his ice-cold hand in hers, offering comfort. She told him that none of it was his fault, urging him to live well. At this point, Doojean felt nothing but shame towards Jae. Her brother then pulled her back into the car. Doojean silently nodded in agreement with her. Soon after, Doojean's father was charged with murder. The courthouse was besieged by reporters, relentlessly questioning Doojean about how much he knew about his murderer father. Suddenly, Jae appeared. The reporters swarmed her like bees, demanding to know how she was feeling. To divert their attention from Jae, Doojean removed his mask right then and there, drawing the full force of the media spotlight onto himself. He didn't want Jae to suffer anymore. Seeing Doojean, Jae's heart ached. During the trial, Doojean bravely testified against his own father, a convicted murderer. Due to the sheer number of crimes he had committed, he was immediately sentenced to life in prison. But even in prison, he didn't face the full consequences of his actions. After some time in prison, a famous Korean reporter, Park Hee-young, sensing a business opportunity, approached Doo-jin's father. They collaborated on an autobiography detailing his criminal exploits. Not only did they both profit handsomely, but Park's career also soared. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. Doo-jin was accepted into the police academy, topping his class, and became a police officer. Meanwhile, Jae had followed in her mother's footsteps, becoming a famous actress. Overwhelmed by shame, Doo-jin had avoided Jae for the past decade. Until today, when he saw her face on an advertisement at a vending machine, his carefully constructed composure crumbled. Just recently, famous actress Hani had visited the police academy for a promotional photo shoot for her new movie but was intercepted by intrusive reporters. 5 years prior, she had witnessed the brutal murder of her parents at the hands of the same deranged killer. To live a normal life, she had changed her name and fought hard to become the successful actress she was today. But this relentless reporter was determined to expose everything. First, he revealed her true identity as the daughter of the late actress Ji-won, then relentlessly questioned her about her emotional state on the night of the murders. Terrified and wanting nothing more than to escape, Jae was again hounded by the reporters, this time about her thoughts on Doo-jin's father's autobiography. She stumbled and fell, but the reporters wouldn't relent. Jae struggled to her feet, her legs suddenly weak. Just as she was about to collapse, a man in a police uniform stepped forward and caught her. The two, who had felt a spark 10 years ago, were reunited by a twist of fate. As their eyes met, the sound of their heartbeats filled the air. Tears welled up in Jae's eyes. Looking at the familiar face before her, memories flooded back. Jae tried to speak, but suddenly fainted. Doo-jin scooped her up in his arms and ran through the crowd towards the hospital. The reporters quickly recognized Doo-jin, but were held back by academy security. Doo-jin anxiously watched over the unconscious Jae. The girl he had longed for over the past 10 years had reappeared so unexpectedly, but in such a heartbreaking state. His heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. Seeing Jae shivering on the bed, he immediately took off his jacket and draped it over her. His hand hovered, aching to touch the woman he yearned for, but he pulled back. His father had brutally murdered her parents. He could never atone for that, never deserved to be near her. When Jae finally stirred awake, she murmured Doo-jin's name. But only her manager sat beside her bed. Doo-jin was nowhere to be seen. Jae immediately began searching the academy grounds. She ran to a vending machine, saw the beverage advertisement featuring her, and decided to wait there, hoping Doo-jin might appear. Meanwhile, the persistent reporters were still arguing with the academy security, trying to get to Doo-jin. Just then, he appeared and agreed to an interview. The reporter, hitting a nerve, questioned the relationship between Doo-jin and Jae, clearly planning to exploit her background for a story. Doo-jin told them to direct their attention to him instead. Then came an even more loaded question. Your serial killer father had a tragic childhood that led to his psychological issues and hatred of the world, didn't he? Doesn't he deserve some public sympathy? Doo-jin immediately condemned the reporters' exploitative tactics and twisting of the truth. The victims' families were the ones who deserved sympathy, not the perpetrator. Meanwhile, Jae's manager learned of the large press presence outside the gates and instructed her to go to the back exit and wait for him there. Doo-jin, just returning inside, overheard this. He stood on the second-floor hallway, silently watching Jae below. His intense gaze betrayed the depth of his longing. Soon, the manager arrived to pick up Jae. The reporters followed closely behind. Doo-jin then used himself as a human shield, blocking their path. Hearing the commotion, Jae leaned out the car window and looked back at Doo-jin. Just like their first encounter 10 years ago, cherry blossoms filled the air, witnessing their reunion once more. Today was supposed to be Doo-jin's triumphant graduation from the police academy. He'd even received a Medal of Honor from the South Korean president. But the moment he stepped off the podium, an egg splattered against his chest. A deluge of reporters swarmed him. It turned out that families of victims harmed by Doo-jin's father had gathered to protest the exploitative publication of his autobiography. Their fury, a burning inferno of grief and resentment, was now directed at Doo-jin. He stood frozen, unsure how to react. Seizing the opportunity amidst the chaos, a reporter named Park snapped his picture. Security guards began to usher the protesting families out of the auditorium, but Dujin stopped them, allowing the families to continue venting their rage and blaming him for his father's sins. The opportunistic reporter Park again photographed Dujin, her mind already crafting a sensationalized narrative. A man, assuming Dujin's acquiescence was merely for show, rushed forward, tackled him to the ground, and raised a fist. Jae witnessed everything from a corner. She watched, heartbroken, as Dujin stood like a wooden statue, enduring the family's curses and blows. What had he done wrong? He hadn't chosen his father. Then, Dujin's stepmother and younger sister arrived. His stepmother, tearfully, pleaded with the families, her words somehow managing to touch them. Dujin squeezed his stepmother's hand, offering a comforting smile to her and his sister. He bowed again in apology to the victims' families before walking away, defeated. For 10 years, he'd silently borne the weight of his father's misdeeds. Suddenly, a girl rushed forward and embraced him. It was Jae. Dujin, facing the woman he longed for, was speechless. Looking at Dujin's bruised face, Jae's heart ached. She gently caressed his cheek. Just then, reporter Park arrived, capturing the tender moment. Dujin quickly pulled Jae into a protective embrace. The relentless reporter Park tried to continue snapping photos, but Jae's brother suddenly appeared, snatched her memory card, smashed her camera, and stepped forward. Without a word, he punched Dujin, a warning blow. "Stay away from my sister," he growled, then pulled Jae away. Back in the infirmary, Dujin watched through the window as his classmates posed for graduation photos with their families. Bitterness welled up inside him, compounded by the pain he'd caused Jae. Tears of anguish streamed down his face. Late at night, the city streets were still bustling with activity. Dujin, nursing a stomach wound, was on the hunt for a suspect. The suspect had taken a young woman hostage, but was startled by the approaching roar of a motorcycle. Dujin seized the opportunity, rushing forward to rescue the woman and successfully subduing the perpetrator. He comforted the frightened woman until his colleagues arrived and took the suspect into custody. Grateful for his intervention, the woman gifted Dujin her handkerchief. At the same time, Jae was at an awards ceremony accepting the award for Most Popular Actress in Korea. Dujin, severely injured and en route to the hospital, saw Jae's acceptance speech on a large outdoor screen. A spark ignited in his eyes. Back at the awards ceremony, after it had concluded, Jae returned to the auditorium and received a beautifully wrapped gift. Upon opening it, she found a hammer inside. Horrific memories from 10 years prior flooded back. Jae collapsed on the spot. At that moment, Dujin regained consciousness in a hospital bed. He had passed out from his injuries and had been found by a nurse. He struggled to sit up but stumbled and fell back onto the bed. To his astonishment, Jae was lying beside him. Dujin was stunned. Looking at her peaceful, sleeping face, he wished he could freeze time. Dujin closed his eyes, savoring this moment with Jae. After an unknown amount of time, he woke again to the nurse's voice, realizing it had all been a dream. He dragged his injured body to his colleague's room, but was shocked to see news on the television that Jae had collapsed after the awards ceremony and had been brought to the same hospital. He immediately began frantically searching for her. After a long and fruitless search, he was about to give up. Suddenly, a commotion erupted nearby. Jae was surrounded by reporters, demanding to know why she had fainted. Faced with their relentless questions, Jae felt overwhelmed. Just as she was about to faint again, Dujin pushed through the crowd and caught her. Seeing him appear so suddenly, Jae was incredulous. Tears streamed down her face. The reporters then turned their attention to the relationship between the two. To protect Dujin, Jae lied, claiming he was just a fan. At that crucial moment, her manager arrived and whisked her away. Dujin, exhausted and in pain, slowly made his way home. His stepmother, seeing his injuries, rushed to embrace him, a moment of overwhelming emotion. Dujin's tears flowed freely. His stepmother's warm embrace was his only solace. The famous actress's life was being threatened, so she went to the police station to file a report. Unexpectedly, the officer assigned to her case was her first love from 10 years ago, Dujin. The gift Jae received contained a hammer. 10 years prior, Dujin's father had used that same hammer to brutally murder Jae's parents. This time, Dujin was determined to protect her. After analyzing the DNA found on the hammer, he quickly identified a stalker as the prime suspect. Confronted with Doo-jin's relentless interrogation, the stalker confessed, admitting he was merely following orders to intimidate Jae. The person behind the threats was Doo-jin's recently released older brother, Hyunmoo. He had been sentenced to 10 years in prison and had just been released. He quickly targeted Jae, fueled by jealousy over his father's favoritism towards Doo-jin. He wanted to prove to his imprisoned father that he was the more worthy son. After learning the truth, Doo-jin rushed to the film set to warn Jae to be careful. He arrived just in time to see Jae filming a romantic scene with a male actor. Witnessing their intimate gestures, Doo-jin quickly turned away. Although he knew it was just acting, he couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. After the scene wrapped, Doo-jin showed Jae a picture of his brother, instructing her to run if she ever encountered him. He then gave her a watch equipped with a tracking device. Doo-jin felt incredibly guilty towards Jae. 10 years ago, his father had deeply hurt her. Now, 10 years later, his brother was following in his footsteps, threatening her safety once again. Jae echoed the same words she had spoken 10 years ago. It wasn't his fault. Meanwhile, Hyunmoo visited his stepmother and younger sister's restaurant. His stepmother immediately recognized him, asking why he hadn't contacted her sooner after his release. Hyunmoo, however, reacted with anger and resentment. He lashed out at his stepmother, throwing objects at her, alarming his younger sister, Sejin. Sejin recognized her older brother. Hyunmoo coldly declared his intention to seek revenge on Doo-jin before storming out. Jae received a message from the director, asking her to come to the set to discuss the script. Without a second thought, she drove to the studio. Upon arrival, she found the place deserted. Just as she was about to confirm with the director, all the lights in the studio went out. Then, the main door was locked from the outside. Jae ran towards the only room with light. Inside, the room was eerily similar to the scene where her parents were murdered, complete with a framed photo of her family of 4. The traumatic memories resurfaced. A man wielding a hammer slowly approached Jae. Terrified, she cowered in the corner, sobbing uncontrollably, just as she had years ago. Suddenly, a car crashed through the wall. By the time Doo-jin reached her, the man had disappeared. Seeing Jae huddled and crying, Doo-jin held her tightly. Tears welled up in both their eyes. Doo-jin's heart ached with a pain so intense it felt like he couldn't breathe. Jae suddenly woke up from the nightmare. Doo-jin had been silently protecting her all along. Outside, it was pouring rain. Doo-jin stood staring blankly at a streetlight. Jae, leaving her house, witnessed the scene. Doo-jin reminisced about the happy moments he and Jae had shared. Deeply in love, they finally opened their hearts to each other. Doo-jin, worried about Jae, had come to protect her. As he entered the parking garage, he sensed danger behind him. It was his brother, Hyunmoo. Hyunmoo was convinced that their father only considered Doo-jin his true son. He vowed to destroy anyone Doo-jin cared about. Doo-jin pleaded with his brother to stop, tears streaming down his face. He argued that their father had never protected them, only manipulated them. Doo-jin insisted that both he and his stepmother had never given up on Hyunmoo. His stepmother was still waiting for him to come home. Consumed by hatred, Hyunmoo heard Jae's voice. He shoved Doo-jin against the wall and, grabbing the hammer, began frantically trying to break down the door. Desperate to prevent his brother from hurting Jae, Doo-jin threw himself in front of the door. Hyunmoo's hand slipped, striking Doo-jin instead. He froze, but Doo-jin embraced his brother tightly, begging him to stop his destructive path. Hyunmoo dropped the hammer and fled, disappearing into the cold, rainy night, consumed by despair. Inside the operating room, doctors fought to save Doo-jin's life. His stepmother and Sejin rushed to the hospital. Jae, covered in blood, repeatedly apologized to Doo-jin's stepmother. Learning that Hyunmoo had injured Doo-jin, his stepmother was heartbroken. Fortunately, the surgery was successful and Doo-jin was out of danger. Alone on the stairwell, Jae stared at her blood-stained hands, overwhelmed by guilt. Doo-jin's stepmother approached her, gently cleaning her hands and apologizing for what had happened 10 years ago. She urged Jae to stay strong, emphasizing that Doo-jin's life wouldn't be complete without her. The next day, Doo-jin's stepmother visited his father in prison for the first time in years. She berated him for being an unfit father. He immediately guessed that Hyunmoo had attacked Doo-jin, a fact that perversely pleased him. His stepmother condemned him for subjecting his sons to a living hell. Hyunmoo, desperate for his father's approval, had become a criminal, attacking his own brother. Doojin was left to atone for his father's sins. The twisted man then attempted to manipulate his wife, burdening her with guilt and reminding her that as his wife, she could never escape him. Reporter Park quickly broke the news of Hyunmoo's attack on his brother. The story immediately went viral. Penniless, Hyunmoo targeted a drunk man but was interrupted by another man who snuck up behind him. The man removed his mask and greeted Hyunmoo, leaving him stunned. The stranger continued to taunt Hyunmoo, confessing to the previous attacks and revealing that he had delivered the hammer to Jae. This man was a devoted follower of Doojin's father in prison, learning his deadly hammer techniques. He brutally murdered the drunk man in front of Hyunmoo, declaring his intention to continue his mentor's legacy. His next targets were Doojin's stepmother and sister. Hyunmoo's face paled. He rushed to his sister's workplace, secretly following and protecting her. Meanwhile, Doojin's stepmother patiently waited for Hyunmoo, mistaking several passers-by for him. Seeing her despondent state, Hyunmoo, hidden nearby, was deeply moved. Their first love, mutual and intense. 10 years earlier, on their first date, Jae, brimming with affection, couldn't take her eyes off Doojin. Doojin, nervous, was practically speechless, nervously gulping down water. Jae was charmed by his shyness. Their first date was a walk in the woods. Jae confessed that whenever she missed him, she would come to the woods alone. The Korean word for Doojin sounded like the word for big tree. Being in the forest made her feel like he was with her. Having the woman he loved beside him felt like a dream. He took Jae's hand, and they strolled through the woods together. They walked to the seashore, sharing stories of the 10 years they had spent apart. Finally, Jae took Doojin to an amusement park she had always dreamed of visiting. Her greatest wish was to enjoy the park with him, just like any other couple. Jae wanted to ride the pirate ship, but Doojin was terrified. He was afraid of heights. He ended up happily riding the carousel while Jae, beside him, pouted playfully. But when their eyes met, her playful frown transformed into a radiant smile. While Doojin and Jae were out buying ice cream, Doojin received a call from the police department. Not wanting to worry Jae, he stepped away to answer it. Left alone, Jae was recognized by a passerby. With no other choice, she quietly slipped away and hid. Doojin turned back to find her gone and immediately began frantically searching for her. Jae, hidden behind a billboard, watched him, her heart aching to see how worried and frightened he was after she'd only been gone for a moment. Spotting her, Doojin ran to her and pulled her into a tight embrace. Jae gazed at him, her heart filled with tenderness for this tall, worried man. After taking Jae home, Doojin felt an emptiness inside. Unable to contain his longing, he returned to her, pouring out the deepest feelings of his heart. Jae responded by kissing him. Their love, a mutual salvation, finally blossomed after that passionate kiss. Meanwhile, Doojin's father, Hee-jae, was planning his escape from prison. He noticed a red rope on a roadside sign. Bracing his back against the seat and ducking slightly, he timed it so the prison transport van hit a low-hanging electrical wire, causing the driver to lose control and crash. The impact knocked the guards unconscious. Hee-jae seized the opportunity, smashing a window and escaping. Cunningly, he didn't immediately flee, but waited for the police to arrive. Hee-jae's prison break had been fueled by a scene he'd witnessed that drove him to a furious rage. He'd seen Doojin sharing an intimate moment with his captain. Unable to bear the sight of his son's closeness with another, jealousy and possessiveness had ignited the desire for escape. Hee-jae was quickly taken to the hospital. His fan, Jeon Yura, disguised as a nurse, was already waiting. Pretending to administer medication, she slipped him a piece of wire. Under Yura's watchful eye, he quickly unlocked his handcuffs. After she left, he waited for the right moment, overpowered the guarding officer, and with the help of his devoted fan, D-hong, successfully escaped the hospital. News of Hee-jae's escape spread quickly, causing widespread anxiety. Doojin immediately went to Jae, reassuring her that he would capture his father and bring him to justice. Hee-jae's first act upon escaping was to visit his ex-wife's small restaurant. However, he saw Doojin's captain leaving the restaurant with his ex-wife, laughing and talking happily together. His male pride deeply wounded, he couldn't swallow this insult. Doojin's captain and stepmother went to Jae's house to deliver kimchi. Overcome with shame, Dujin's stepmother couldn't face Jae and quickly left. The captain followed after her. A car suddenly pulled up beside him. Heejae's fan, John Yura, pretended to ask for directions. As the captain leaned down to the passenger window, she brutally murdered him with a hammer. Dujin, searching for his captain and stepmother, stumbled upon the captain's body lying in the shadows. He rushed to his side. From a distance, Heejae, seeing this, signaled to Yura to drive away. Clutching Dujin's hand, the captain told him that Heejae was responsible and urged Dujin not to follow the same destructive path. Then he closed his eyes, never to open them again. For over 10 years, the captain had treated Dujin like his own son. He had been a father figure to Dujin. Now he had been brutally murdered by Dujin's own father. Everyone mourned the captain's death, but none more deeply than Dujin's stepmother. She collapsed, weeping silently. Returning home from the funeral, Dujin's stepmother was confronted by Heejae. He cornered her, threatening her very existence. This ignited a fierce protectiveness within Dujin. His stepmother angrily told Heejae to stop his delusions. No matter what happened, Dujin would never become a monster like him. Enraged, Heejae swung the hammer. Struggling to sit up, his stepmother urged him to finish her off, revealing that she had discovered his murderous secret from 10 years ago but had chosen to flee and atone for her inaction instead of reporting him. At that moment, Hyunmoo burst through the door. Terrified of his murderous father, he was nonetheless handed the hammer and told to prove himself worthy of his father's acknowledgement. His stepmother urged Hyunmoo to run. Hyunmoo pleaded with his father, telling him he couldn't do it and begging him to stop this madness. But Heejae snatched the hammer back and brutally attacked him. Hyunmoo collapsed in pain. As Heejae turned on his wife, Hyunmoo threw himself in front of her, desperately pleading for his father to spare her. As Heejae prepared to punish his useless son, his stepmother crawled to shield him. This mirrored Dujin protecting Jae 10 years prior, triggering something in Heejae. Consumed by his twisted logic, Heejae was now fixated on sending his son to heaven. Just then, police sirens wailed. Yura called, urging him to escape. Reluctantly, Heejae spared them for the time being. Dujin arrived moments later to find his stepmother and brother motionless. He rushed them to the hospital. Thankfully, their lives were not in danger. Dujin's stepmother wept, heartbroken at the sight of Hyunmoo lying unconscious, injured while protecting her. When Hyunmoo awoke, he finally opened up to his stepmother, promising to confess to the police once he recovered. She held his hand, vowing to wait for his return. Dujin visited his brother, urging him to let go of past resentments and apologize to Jae. He assured Hyunmoo that he, their stepmother, and their sister would wait for him to come home after he confessed. The misunderstandings between the brothers were finally resolved. On the anniversary of Jae's parents' death, she and her manager traveled to their grave site, escorted by police. Halfway up the mountain, their car was blocked by another vehicle. A police officer got out to investigate. Heejae ambushed the officer, quickly incapacitating him. He then smashed the car window and dragged Jae's manager out. Yura, seizing the opportunity, drugged Jae. Heejae then called Dujin, threatening Jae's life and demanding to meet him alone. Enraged and desperate to save Jae, Dujin reluctantly agreed to his father's terms. Following his father's instructions, Dujin arrived at Jae's parents' gravesite to find a rusty hammer placed on a bouquet of flowers. Picking it up, he vowed to rescue Jae and bring Heejae to justice. Meanwhile, Jae regained consciousness. No longer afraid, she slapped Heejae and courageously demanded an apology. She condemned him for robbing her of her parents, her happiness, and forcing her to live in hiding for 10 years. She also demanded he apologize to the families of all his victims. Delusional, Heejae denied any wrongdoing, claiming he had merely helped them end their meaningless lives sooner. Dujin, hammer in hand, arrived at the prearranged meeting place. Heejae greeted him with the chilling news that he had harmed Jae. Dujin's composure shattered. The ingrained ruthlessness within him surged. In his fury, he almost attacked his father, but Jae's voice echoed in his mind, pulling him back. He couldn't become like his father, who wanted to see him descend into madness. Clinging to this, Dujin became convinced that Jae was still alive. He told Heejae that he became a police officer to atone for his father's sins, enduring everything in silence. Meanwhile, Jae had shoved Yura away, breaking free from her grasp and the syringe. She jabbed Yura with the needle and quickly called the police, giving them her location. Just as Hee-jae was about to attack Doojin, Jae appeared. Instead of running, she shielded Doojin, mirroring his act of protection 10 years earlier. This only fueled Hee-jae's rage. He swung the hammer, and a brutal fight erupted between father and son. Pinned down by his father, Doojin, using his police training, dislocated Hee-jae's wrist with a swift maneuver. The police finally arrived. In a poignant moment, Doojin handcuffed his own father. The notorious killer who had terrorized the nation was finally apprehended, captured by his own son. Hee-jae's rage dissipated. He had failed to turn Doojin into a reflection of himself. Doojin helped Jae up. Just as everyone thought it was over, Hee-jae, while being uncuffed, seized a police officer's gun and took him hostage. Seeing his father's continued defiance, Doojin grabbed a colleague's gun, aimed it at his father, and fired without hesitation. Hee-jae was subdued once more. Doojin had conquered his father and the inherited demons that tormented him. Doojin's stepmother and sister returned to their normal lives. Doojin remained by Jae's side. Each morning, he woke to see his beloved Jae sleeping peacefully beside him. This simple happiness was all they had ever desired. Jae playfully kissed him, and Doojin gently cupped her face, returning the kiss. Their long-awaited happy ending had finally arrived. Hyunmu's trial day arrived. Seeing his stepmother and sister in the courtroom, he no longer felt alone. Doojin arrived, offering Hyunmu a look of unwavering support. Despite facing justice, Hyunmu's life now held hope and light. Hee-jae received a life sentence. They met under a tree, a symbolic farewell to their past selves. Because they had saved each other and run towards each other, they had emerged from the darkness and into the light of their shared happiness.